Part 2. Loss. Chapter 3. The Sel'akgu Jrun. Kalina folds serenely through the rippling cold gray clouds of the gas giant commonly known as Tissan's Eye. A few hundred meters below him drifts a large Gothic complex of structures, his private chateau. A ray of light from the planet's star breaks through the clouds. Its light reflects and refracts through the aggregate disorientation of Vor's form as it would through an assemblage of prisms born of madness. The illumination provides a subtle change in temperature, a fragile warmth from above. In the vacuum of space, Vor could release his alignment with the planet's magnetic field to be whisked away on the solar winds of Tissan's star. But angling through the chilling, brutal winds of this alien world, the push of that faraway star feels non-existent. Vor inhales deeply. The huge uncertainty of his body separates, expands, a leisurely efflorescence of perverted geometries. He releases the breath, a slow implosion of faceted distortions. Ah, the smells of Tissan's Eye. Vor inhales again. He maneuvers his major pains to slice through the rushing winds, to slide through the skies. The clipped rhythm of crest and fall calms his mind. Cupping the gale at his leeward ends pulls him into a wide pattern of shattered confusion. An intense stretch hums throughout the giant's vitreous accretion. If this wasn't such a consequential situation, he would be lightly amused, as he usually is, by thoughts of how much this action reminds him of a stretching cat. The underlying gravity of this similitude heightens his focus. Vor's 15 eyes dart in fitful starts and stops along eccentric paths, seething points of light, like furious wounds lanced in space. Vor forces another exhale, gradually, collapses into a more localized irregularity. He stills his probing eyes, clears his mind. Now, he is ready. Sel'akgu has waited a lifetime for this moment. Cybernetic synapses pulse as she wills her implants to check the seals on her EVA suit. Lines of diagnostic terms flicker across the heads-up display on her visor. After a few seconds, her implants finish their scan, and the heads-up display shows only one phrase in green. All seals at full integrity. Sel'akgu reflexively looks around the bedroom to make sure no one else is there. She remains alone, as she has been since her return following dinner. It is a beautiful room, an enormous and luxuriously appointed room that speaks volumes about the wealth of the chateau's owner. The creature, the Sel'akgu Jrun, the Gixin calling itself Kalina acts civil enough in person, Sel'akgu thinks. But being civil doesn't erase the creature's crimes, nor does it erase the criminal past of its kind. From her seat on the edge of the room's incredibly comfortable bed, Sel'akgu leans over her knees to double-check the fastenings for the armor on her boots. She reflects on dinner in the cavernous dining room. She recalls the Sel'akgu Jrun's plea for a negotiable peace between the two of them, as its bioluminous signals glowed softly along uncertain lines and loathsome hyaloid geometries. The creature had retired from military life more than a Gillith galactic standard year ago, it noted. Over 3 Earthland decades, and it went on and on about all of the things it had done during that time to atone for its past deeds, its voice smooth and sharp like the edge of thick, broken glass. Decades, Sel'akgu thought. Decades meant little to the Gixin. The damnable things aged as slow as mountains. The bastard may as well have been talking about what it did last week, for all that 30 or 40 years mattered. Sel'akgu shakes her head with a disgust as raw now as it was an hour ago. With short, abrupt movements, she clamps tassets over her thighs as her mind goes back to dinner. Her movements automatic as her thoughts stew in outrage. She would have laughed as the Sel'akgu Jrun recounted its efforts to make amends for its actions, but the creature seemed sincere as it floated in its hover field above the other end of the long dinner table. When Sel'akgu sensed no mockery to fuel her scorn, she grew furious at the thought that this monster actually believed a few donations to the sick and downtrodden, and a few hours of charitable service could make up for all the human lives lost at its hand, not to mention the untold souls of countless other species exploited and destroyed as a direct result of the Sel'akgu Jrun's professional decisions. Syed remembers how she bluntly rejected any diplomatic solution to her challenge. With a grim set to her face, she made it clear to the creature that only its Jilith blood would bring her peace. The monster sighed in response. It had stopped folding during her tirade, and at the mention of its death, the creature returned its attention to vaporizing and inhaling its meal. Syed averted her eyes. She had to rest her mind. Looking at a Gixin Jail was disorienting, exhausting, and being this close to one left a dull pressure behind her eyes and a thrumming between her ears. It was worse somehow when they spoke, when the monsters vibrated and scraped different facets of themselves to vocalize. That sent waves of prickling irritation across her skin. It took all her focus to fight off the accompanying vertigo. Syed was positive the effect was more than visual, more than auditory, and she could never rid her mind of the stabbing intensity of Jilith eyes, like miniature suns leaving discolored scars across her memory. Never blinking, always searching, always searching. Syed remembers placing her hand on the edge of the table to steady herself as the two of them fell back into silence, alone again in the enormous dining room. Only the occasional bleep from the devices in orbit around the Sel'akgu Jrun dared to interrupt the tension. That, and the irregular flash throughout Vor's polyhedral incongruity. Syed sat there more than slightly frustrated. Even though Udo Genselot was the official language of the Wedge and the first thing she ever spoke, she didn't understand the bioluminescent signals of Jilith communication. No one did. No Gixin Jail ever taught the nuances of their nonverbals to any non-Gixin as a rule, and as a result, Syed, like most others, always felt she was missing out on important pieces of the conversation whenever she spoke with one of the creatures. So she glared at the monster, trying hard to read its actions, desperate to understand why it was acting so calmly when she had just said she was here to kill it. The Sel'akgu Jrun returned her unwavering glare many times over, but said not another word until after the plates had been cleared by its naked Lenishe servitor. Then all it did was give her leave to return to her quarters to prepare. The creature said it would wait for her outside, and when she was ready to begin, she was to pull the bell cord just inside her door. Rousing herself from memories of dinner, Syed stands and shifts her legs to settle her weight into the suit. She cyberpulses a visualization of her media library. Of the 2 audio files there, she selects the first one to play. Then she walks over to the wardrobe to begin attaching the modular components of a cuirass to her suit. Her ear implants crackle briefly with static. This is soon replaced by her own recorded voice reciting the reasons for her rage, the reasons for her vendetta against Vor Kalina, the Sel'akgu Jrun, the death of all hope. Vor Kalina was one of the most highly decorated Gixin apexes upon its retirement. The galactic news source praised the creature for being a brilliant strategist and a compassionate conqueror for hundreds of years. And to solidify its nearly mythical reputation, towards the end of its career, Vor was the celebrated Gixin Jail that brought peace and stability to the Belamissa sector during the Earthland uprising there 4 Jilith Galactic Standard years ago. Few now remembered the Earthland's fight for independence in the sector, but Vor was a hero all the same, Syed thinks with a sneer. She stops hearing the recording. She grudgingly acknowledges the monster's gifts as a strategist, and the creature may well have been compassionate with those systems that surrendered without a fight, but those that did fight were shown no mercy. The Sel'akgu Jrun took no prisoners. No, that wasn't true. Apex Vor Kalina did take high-value prisoners, but after their heads were split open, and after their memories were dissected, analyzed, and cataloged by Mind Probe, the prisoners didn't last too long. But that was longer than the monster allowed everyone else. Those not worth capture were slaughtered without exception and without hesitation. Men, women, children. It didn't matter. Entire cities were razed to the ground, and whole worlds were sanitized of their spacefaring populations. Vor would order all non-Gixan technology destroyed as well, afraid that victims of their violence would leave malicious contagions behind for their conquerors. Not that this fear was unfounded. And though it was possible that there was some file somewhere that kept the human version of the revolt alive, all human records of Earthland history found on any planet in the Bela Missa sector were erased by the Zayt Dekuban. Syed was a child when the uprising occurred, little more than a toddler. Just before the violence began, she was sent on vacation with the rest of the orphans under state care, sectors away from Halcyon, a quaint, out-of-the-way planet encircling an unassuming Class K star at the edge of Bela Missa space. She'll never forget the orderlies' faces as they said goodbye, so sad and afraid. Little Syed didn't know why they were sad or what they were afraid of, but she became frightened too. And with the insight inspired by that fear, little Syed knew that she wasn't going on any vacation. The orderlies did their best to hide their emotions and convince the children that all would be well, but little Syed saw the truth of things and she began to cry. She'll never forget how their hugs felt like the last hugs she'd ever receive. How their tear-filled eyes never stopped staring after her and the other children, even as they were forced from the spaceport waiting room, pushed through the boarding tunnel, and seated on the departing starship. They were the only parents she'd ever had. Syed wanted to scream at the Sel'akgu Jrun during dinner. She wanted to beg it to tell her why all those she left behind had to die. Halcyon wasn't even an important base of operations for the uprising, but the Sel'akgu Jrun went ahead and sanitized the entire system anyway. As she sat across from the creature during dinner, watching it atomize its food to mist, Syed found she couldn't bring herself to speak. She told herself she was full of anger, not anguish. She couldn't give the creature the satisfaction of thinking she was hurt. She let this train of thought build momentum until nothing was left but a red fury. Then she went on the attack. Fueled by her rage, she once again found her voice and told the creature of all the other palaces it owned that she'd come across during her search for it, during her hunt. The Pel Apex was a hard jag to find, but determined as she was, Syed found each and every one of its secluded homes. She told the Sel'akgu Jrun of how she destroyed them all, along with all its servitors and every Gixan Jail that got in her way. And as she spoke, she watched it. She forced her glare to fix on each one of its eyes, those bright, stabbing pinpoints of light. When she was done talking, she struggled to see clearly past the hatch of afterimages scrawled across her vision, but she persevered. And when she did, she saw no sign of any emotion whatsoever from the monster. It didn't even make a sound. There wasn't even a bioluminescent blip. Syed knew then and there that Vor Kalina, the Sel'akgu Jrun, was pure evil, and that her quest to kill it was just. Back in the luxurious bedroom, Syed finishes securing the last fittings for her armor. She cyberpulses to her suit's computer and watches the heads-up display. After the computer integrates the armor with the suit's systems, Syed drops to a knee and looks up with unfocused eyes. She gives a silent prayer to her gods and to her parents to help see her through this, her most daunting challenge yet. And at the end of her prayer, she squeezes her eyes tightly shut. A tear runs down the right side of her nose. She makes the sign of her faith with both arms, opens her eyes, and rises with a look of utter determination. Moving to the side of the bed, she kneels back down to open the oversized duffel bag she brought to the chateau from her ship, then steps up and away. With slow, deliberate motions, several thick vines reach up and out of the bag. They feel around, touch the floor, find the proper footing, and tense as the main mass of a plant thing rises into the room. A Tashiktun Tinga. Very little was known of the species outside of the fact that they were native to some rarely remembered system in the Vivrin toy arc of the Wedge. Those that knew anything at all of the plant things only tell of the few that had made names for themselves throughout the galaxy as killers for hire. Not that the entire race was composed of murderers, but most other beings easily mistook the Tinga for simple plants. And for those in the business of killing, this easy misperception made them the first choice for cunning assassinations. The creature pulls itself fully out of the bag. Syed marvels, as she always does, at how it really just looks like a freestanding vine, and nothing more. The plant thing shakes its leaves with a supple-sounding rustle to begin a short tirade. At the same time, it utters an undulating nasally tone, hisses in its strange, raspy tongue, and snaps one of its tendrils across its main trunk as an exclamation. A complicated language, but Syed knows it well enough by now. Yes, well, she replies stonily. At least you didn't have to watch the Sel'akgu Jrun eat. A grimace flashes across her face as she reaches down to grab the large rifle lying on the bed. It is the latest in killing technology, an O-series matter disruptor with heat-seeking mini-missile attachments. Syed walks over to the room's only entrance. She stops under the door's massive archway and turns back to face her longtime friend and companion. Her hand grips the metal-wrought door handle with anxious force. Remember, she says, her voice heavy with the promise of death, no matter what happens to me, you make sure that monster dies. The Tinga produces a low hum, a rustle, and a hiss as an affirmative. Giving the plant thing a short nod of acknowledgement, Syed turns, opens the door, and purposely ignores the fat braided bell cord as she moves to leave the room. No such thing as fair play where the Sel'akgu Jrun is concerned. A motion sensor triggers. Thick metal plates fall in a rush to shutter the windows and seal the door. Syed's surprise instantly defers to her survival instinct. Enhanced reflexes engage her genetically strengthened musculature. She darts toward the hall, but the door's metal plate catches her shoulder before she clears the doorway, slams her to the ground in the blink of an eye. The rigidness of her suit's armor prevents her legs from being shoved up through her torso, but lying face down in the hall, pinned between the metal plate and the floor, she still can't feel anything below her knees. The O-series matter disruptor clatters loudly across the floor, violently freed from her grasp when she hit the ground. Syed watches it with despair, watches as her best chance to exact revenge slides to a stop about 2.5 meters away. Syed strains to reach the weapon with desperate effort. Spittle flies from her lips, speckling the inside of her visor. The Tinga moves toward her from the other side of the door. A deafening clank sounds from the chateau's walls as several clamps disengage inside the structure. Syed's eyes go wide. Boom! A powerful electromagnetic blast fires the room out of the bottom of the chateau. Syed's armored form is ripped through the doorway and out into open skies. The mostly sealed box of a room speeds like a shot toward the gaseous planet's dense liquid core. Small rockets installed on the outside corners of the room activate in unison to spin the box faster and faster as it falls. Syed is whipped over and under the structure in rapidly descending circles. Teetering on the edge of consciousness, she struggles against the high G's of her rotation. Inside the room, the solid Gothic-styled metal-built furniture slams around brutally with each rotation, turning the whole contraption into a lethal tumbler. The Tinga inside is bludgeoned into a pulpy, sappy mess. Short seconds pass, and the spinning death trap disappears from sight.